Today, I'm delighted to welcome Javel Watt, who is based in London, I believe, to share his insights and ideas. Thank you for joining us, Javel.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling today, and how are you arriving on this call as a human? Because seeing as this show is all about being human, I want to kind of strip the work out of it to begin with, and just come and check in as two fellow humans talking to each other.
Um, I'm feeling positive, I'm feeling motivated, but also um just navigating life.
Mm.
Obviously, we have work life, we have personal life, and just trying to find the balance between both of those things and allowing myself to stay grounded while doing so. Um, Currently going through family court at the moment, so just trying to find the sweet spot in dealing with the emotions from that and maintaining my work-life balance and so forth. But other than that, I'm good.
No, it's important to always try and find that right balance, isn't it? I think that's what being a human is all about trying to find the balance in life. And what would you say? Um, when do you feel most alive? Which aspects of you is like when you think about like when do you feel most human? When do you feel most alive? Have you got like hobbies or certain experiences in your life that you've had where you felt like wow, like that I felt like a proper human at that moment? You know?
Um, I have a few examples when I feel most human. I would say I feel most human when I'm helping, being able to
Mm,
give back, supporting others. Um, I feel like is a really human expression. It's love, selflessness in its effect. Being able to uplift others and just see that smile on people's face is really rewarding, and that really allows me to feel human. It allows me to feel connected to people. But on the flip side of that, vulnerability,
mm,
weakness, those moments when I'm struggling are the times when I feel really human. You know that saying, people like to say, well, we're just human. I
mm.
think those moments of weakness and the hard times really embody that just human feeling. But on the flip side of that, I would say we're also so much more. Um, that kind of saying for me is a debilitating belief to an extent, but it's like there's two facets to that. So I'd
Mm.
say the fact that we're human allows us to achieve great things, but then also in the hard times, those are really human as well because it shows the weaker side. Strength and the weakness is the full kind of sweet spot that we was just talking about in terms of humanity, I'd say.
Yeah, 100%. And that might lead us a little bit into this next question that I'm about to ask you, which is, can you describe your work and your experience with criminal justice a little bit?
Okay. Um, so let's start with my experience with the criminal justice system. First time I went to prison was when I was 16. I think the first time I was arrested was when I was about 12. Um, I've been to prison three times from within the last, let's say, 11 years. So since 2015, I've been to prison three times, done just over 5 years total, worth of sentence. And in terms of the work that I do currently stems from lived experience. So being able to use my experiences to properly support others to navigate those same experiences that I managed to come out the other side of. So uh, over my journey, I've had a few what I like to call highs and lows. I've had quite a few low points. Um, and I think those low points allow me to really connect with people on a human level, touch base with people, really understand where they're coming from more than just theory.
Mm,
Um, so example being, I grew up with adoptive parents, so I went through the care system. I've been kicked out of two primary schools, two secondary schools,
yeah.
um, mainstream schools is what I meant to say. So I attended two PRUs. I've also been sectioned under the Mental Health Act. I've been homeless a few times in my life. Um, yeah, so I've had a quite a few adverse experiences that,
Mm,
when it comes to lived experience, gives me a full rounded picture of being able to support and how to support others.
Yeah, 100%. And so you do that personally and through, I know you've come into contact with other organizations that you now work with from your time in prison as well.
Yeah, so a few of the organizations that I've been working with upon release have been an organization called Capital. They're based in West Sussex. They're like a mental health and substance misuse charity. I also I'm on the youth board for a organization called Social Arc. I'm also part of a collective called the Parental Imprisonment Collective. And then I'm a champion for Spark Inside. So what that means is I use my lived experience to be able to advise in terms of policies, support in terms of interviews for new delivery managers for Spark Inside. And the champion part means whilst I was in prison, I went through Spark Inside's course called the Hero's Journey. So they have two facets to that. They have the Black Hero's Journey as well as the Hero's Journey. So I participated in that whilst I was in prison. I was identified to be a champion, and then we basically done some through the gate stuff, and then yeah, I'm basically on a board of champions for Spark Inside.
Nice. And can you tell me a little bit more about the Spark Inside program, that hero's journey, or anything else that you think it would, just with that lens of thinking about, more human experiences. I know that coaching's been helpful for me,
Hmm.
in terms of connecting with, just even setting goals is a very human, thing. And when we're goalless and directionless, I think prison can feel quite hopeless. So, tell me a little bit more about, that program Spark Inside, and how it relates to being human.
Okay. Um, so what I would say is Spark Inside's hero's journey um, is something that people really pick up on when they're at that transitional phase in their life. Especially being in prison, you might not be able to see all the opportunities around you, but you know that you're ready for a change. You can kind of feel it.
Mm,
You may feel like prison lacks opportunities, and then that's where Spark Inside come along. They Within the course, you do 3 sessions. It starts towards the end of your sentence. They do the facilitators that participate within those sessions, they're also life coaches. So at the end of the course, you would pick whether you want to do follow-on kind of life coaching, and that kind of goes through the gate. So you'd start that 2 weeks before release, and then that carries on through the gate. I think you do about 8 sessions. Um, the course itself, it teaches you about literally your journey, your weaknesses, your strengths. But I would say the main thing that everybody speaks about and remembers is they do something called possiping, which stands for positive gossiping. And the experience of that is so profound. You sit at the back of the class in a chair with your back turned to everybody, and everybody literally just calls out all the positive things that they can see. Um, that is such a game changer
wow.
for so many people. Yeah, because um, so many people are in situations or have been in situations where they haven't been told anything positive. It's normally
Mm,
things that kind of break them down instead of lifting them up. And being in a space surrounded by people who you may not know. So when I done the course, there was people who I'd seen on the wing, but we haven't really conversed.
yeah.
But all of these people had wonderful things to say about me, as well as myself for everybody else. And I think that really opens people's eyes to the capabilities and possibilities of themselves. Because if you have a negative narrative um, pertaining yourself, being able to hear strangers essentially saying all of these amazing things, what they believe that you're capable of doing, what you can achieve, really solidifies and sparks no pun intended, really
Yeah, yeah.
sparks this light in you, allowing you to kind of see the path ahead of you. Um, they use a few different examples for different heroes and go through what they call the hero's journey. So the hero's journey is essentially just a cycle that people go through of discovery. So you might have like a pivotal moment, for example, um, where it causes you to have to pick a path, either left or right. And
Mm.
that's kind of the make or break in terms of being able to complete that cycle. Um, and yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing, and then that leads on to this follow up question, so we can go into a bit into this into a bit more depth. But drawing on your experiences, um, what environments and relationships do you think best support being more connected and being more human? Um, and I think you kind of just mentioned it there with that kind of positive affirmations or ways in which you can get people to look at themselves differently or to create that little shift in maybe how you lift someone up as opposed to break them down.
yeah.
Um,
So I would say from my experience, example being, I've been, like I said, I've been to prison 3 times. The first two
mm,
times I came out of prison, I wasn't exposed to a new community. And what that meant for me was, whilst I was trying to push forward, make changes in my life, I had no one around me that really understood that change or were able to support me through that change. And
mm,
essentially, we're social creatures. So when I needed some form of companionship, I ended up going back to the old communities, which were surrounded by people that were participating in these behaviors that ended me up in prison in the first place. So inevitably, I ended up participating in these behaviors again. The
yeah.
breakthrough for me was coming out of prison this third time and having Spark inside. To kind of lean back on. I came out of prison, I was a part of the champions group, and what that allowed me to see or allowed me to be a part of was a collective where it was composed of two things: people who understood where I was coming from, but also understood where I was going. And that was the big change for me. That was the sweet spot because
Mm,
coming out of prison, it enabled me to kind of measure my successes against other people's. So I was a month out of prison. There had been people who are champions who have been out of prison for 2 years, been out of prison for 1 year. And during that time period, I got to see all the milestones and accomplishments they've managed to achieve and kind of measure myself against that. Okay, this person's managed to achieve X amount of things in a year. This person's managed to achieve X amount of things in 2 years. I wonder what I can do in that period of time, and it shows you that this is possible because you're sitting around other people that have done it. And why I use that example is because if you're not surrounded by people who are uplifting, who are going to hold you accountable, who are going to be compassionate but stern enough to kind of direct you or help steer you in the direction that you want to head in,
yeah.
and pull you up on your shortcomings. Um, that's so important. If you don't have people that are holding you accountable and you find it's difficult holding yourself accountable also, then inevitably you're going to fall back and slip back into old ways. So the accountability element is a huge aspect of importance as well as the compassion.
Having that again, we started the call with balance, and we're kind of get coming back to it again, but this time between compassion and accountability,
Hmm.
having people that can hold you account and support you and help you with making smart goals and pushing you and supporting you at the same time.
Hmm. Just adding on to that, um, I have a workshop that I run in my organization called Beyond the Narrative, and it's called collective individualism. So it's a term that I coined the beginning of last year. And what that means to me is, so it comes back to the environments and relationships and so forth, but how society often treats it is we end up a part of a community and we feel forced to fit in. And
Mm,
what that ends up doing is um, forcing people to suppress parts of their true self to fit into that community because that part of their self may not align with that community. At
mm,
the beginning of our workshops, what we always ask is, as an icebreaker, is what's one thing you really enjoyed doing as a young person that you stopped doing because you didn't feel like your community would accept it? And those are the environments where you can't grow. You find
yes.
it difficult to grow and really be human because everybody's judgmental and everybody places their opinions on you, and in turn you end up adopting that, so you get further and further away from being your true self and allowing you to fully be human and progress and expand and grow.
Yes. 100%. I couldn't agree with it more. And we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail. But first, what I want to ask is, we invited everybody that comes onto this series. We invite them to bring an object that represents a moment of humanness in your life or your work. Would you be able to share what you chose?
Of course. The object I chose is a book. It's a book by a guy called Mark Wallen, and it's called It Didn't Start With You.
Nice. It
So
didn't
this
start
book
with
is
you.
about, yeah, so this book is about inherited family trauma, how it shapes who we are and how to end the cycle. So this book essentially talks about trauma being passed down through DNA. And the reason why I chose this book is because um we keep speaking about kind of essentially being the best version of yourself. What does it mean to actually be human? And for me, being human is exactly that, being showing up, being the best version of yourself, or working towards that, working towards a specific goal that allows you to better fit into your community, um, be a better parent, be a better child, be a better friend, cousin, brother, whatever it may be. Because how I look at things is, if you truly love somebody and if you truly care about someone, you should want that person to experience the best version of you. So inevitably, you should be working towards that version, in order for those people to be able to experience that. So taking into account things like trauma, um, and the things that we struggle with is really the only way that we're going to be able to get to those achievements. You have to understand where your traumas come from and be willing to work through them,
Mm.
to be able to better give back to your community and be able to better fit into your community and uplift others.
Yeah, I think there's a big word here about being humanness, and for you as well, and me and all of us, right? We can't deny that we're social creatures. You said at the beginning that we all need to feel connected, but we're also talking about the quality of those connections and the quality of those
Mhm.
communities,
Yeah.
and that's something that I found very I needed, and it stunted my growth even when I was growing and coming out of custody and moving forward, going into education. It felt quite lonely. You know,
Mm.
it felt like there wasn't like people who had the same mindset as me, or I felt like a imposter syndrome. You know what I mean? When I'd be in uni, or if I was at a certain space, and then feeling like I'd have these two, I'd be floating in between, literally the the man them that I got along with, that I grew up with, and then
Yeah.
at the same time, like the people I was going to college with, or you know what I mean, like or like these different groups that I was trying to integrate into and find a home. You know what I mean, and that can be quite a tricky transition phase. And I guess you could put that lens over in prison. The problem in there, I would say, is that there's a lot of people with trauma. There's a lot of people with crimogenic views. There's a lot of people with values that you are more likely to make you engaged in violence or criminal behavior,
Hmm.
which get reinforced because the other thing that I believe is that you are the company that you keep. That the five people you spend the most time with will
Yeah.
probably inform who you are. And no matter how much of a free thinker you think you are, the people
Yeah.
that you're spending the most time with will rub off on you in some way, whether it's your
Hmm.
mood or the levels of stress you have or the views you have on the world. So I think it's good if we could just take a minute to just think about, okay, what's the challenges then for in the prison environment with that dilemma that we need good communities, people that can challenge us, people that can nurture us and support us at the same time, and the limitations of the prison environment in that instance, and then through the gate and how people transition and navigate that problem of finding quality communities and how you navigated that and whether you've seen any other projects or initiatives that could be rolled out more mainstream or expanded and grown so that more people, especially coming out of custody, have that kind of have those communities that they can try and be part of.
I would say in prison, I would say any particular environment where you're trying to grow, and really build those connections with people, you have to go through that period of loneliness that you spoke of. You have to
Mm,
be comfortable kind of sitting on your own and analyzing. Um, but this is it's all self-discovery. Unless
Yeah.
you know who you are and you can be fully grounded in the person that you are, then it's going to be difficult. And what you were just talking about, that split,
Mm.
your like your old friends as well as like the new path that you're going down and
Yeah.
finding the sweet spot in the middle, it's literally a pool between your old self and your new self and trying to
Yeah.
figure out like, am I fully ready to lean into this new self? Like, do I am I
Yeah.
fully ready to let go of that old self? And I think the sweet spot with all of that is when you finally get to a position where you can show up in every instance as the same person. Because I think you have loads of different faces and identities whilst you're growing
Yes.
up. You might have the person you are with your family, then you have the person you are with your friends, then you have the person you are when you're at work. So you have loads of different identities within the different communities. As soon as you feel grounded enough to show up as the same person in all of these situations, is when you start to be able to build that community and you really do feel human. And
Yes.
in prison, I would say the way to navigate that is find people that have similar interests.
Mm.
Like, don't be afraid to build new connections because that's what it's all about. If you're trying to become a new person, you can't do the same things that the old version of you was doing. The
Yes.
new person has to come with new habits, new ways of doing things that kind of overturn all of the old ways, and you have to solidify those things in terms of your structure and your routine and so forth. And it just starts with the small changes, but literally just finding people that are in alignment with who you are. Maybe even somebody who's read a similar book as you. That's a way to kind of bridge that gap between communication and building a new friendship that might
Mm.
uplift you and steer you in the direction that you want to go. How I navigated that in prison was, I think it was different every time I've been to prison. The first time I went to prison, um, I was out of London, so I went to prison the first time Cookham, and it was a YO. Um, what really worked for me there was I wasn't surrounded by anybody that I actually knew. There was people I knew of, people that knew of me, but in terms of actually having that direct connection in terms of people knowing myself,
Mm.
I didn't have that. So what that done was reduce the amount of expectations. It allowed me to be able to broaden my horizons because there wasn't an expectation of who I was or who I had to be
Mm.
because nobody really knew me like that.
Yes.
So it gave me the freedom. And I feel like that's what often people need. That's what people
Yes.
really need when it comes to
Mm.
these times. Like sometimes people end up in prisons that are miles away from where their family and friends are. So it's
Yeah.
difficult to get visits, it's difficult to keep in communication with these people. But sometimes that lack of communication can be really what you need to discover yourself.
Yes. 100.
Um, it's a bit more difficult to navigate in prison, depending on what kind of prison you are, B cat, C cat. I would say things are a lot easier in D cat because everything's free flowing. You can walk around, you can mingle, you can go to the library when you want, or you can go to education when you want. And I would say the people that you're able to connect with, it would be easier to find. If you're
Yeah.
on a wing, like in a B cat or a C cat, it's literally just have conversations. What kind of books do people read? Where do the interests align? And then kind of just stick with those people and build on those relationships.
Yeah. You're touching on the question I was going to ask next, which was if you had a magic wand and we had a transformed human justice system, what would be
Mm,
happening? What would it look like? Because you talked a little bit about different categories and bands and how far away from homes and regime. You know, I mean, like if we were going to try and create a more human system that allowed people to kind of find themselves, you
mm.
know, what would, you know, how could we, what would we do with that magic wand, you know, if we were going to try and create a space that encouraged that more?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, oh, has to be doing more work on self,
Mm.
more self-discovery kind of things. stop telling people what it is that you think they need, and really learn to listen to individuals. Do
Mm,
more, do gather more data, do a lot more lived experience focused work. People that have actually been through it and come out the other side, instead of it being um people that are just educated in the area but don't actually have the real life experience to
mm,
accompany that education. I think as soon as policies and decisions are collaborative and meet in the middle, I think it would make a much more human justice system. Um, yeah, need to bring in more workshops, more positive activities, because everything in prison is pretty much outdated. It's like every prison I've been to, they teach bricklaying, or might teach you to be an electrician, or it's a lot of physical labor, things that society-wise you might expect the man to do. But things have changed, times have changed, and there's people podcasting, there's people doing live streams, there's people making money from playing games. I think opening up and broadening people's horizons is always going to be um, a great direction to head
yeah.
in, especially if you're trying to prepare people to be released and transform and reform themselves.
Yes.
Um, reduce the angle of just punishment. The
Yes.
punitive aspect is what everybody focuses on, or how prisons are run at the moment. It's just punishment. And punishment doesn't make people change. Punishment turns people into animals. Consistent punishment says to people that you're not worthy or you're a bad person. And when those ideas and understandings get embodied by those people, then it just creates another cycle that people have to learn to break out of. Now, if we showed people more compassion and actually treated people as humans, people as just people that had made mistakes,
Mm,
and maybe haven't had the right education or haven't had the best start in life, they didn't have access to the things that would allow them to make the better choices. Allow people those chances to make the better choices instead of demonizing people and so forth.
yeah.
Um, I think things like having enhanced wings or even just having communications with people when they first end up in prison? Are you a person who genuinely wants to make the best use of your time whilst in prison? If you are, put you on a wing full of people that also want to do so.
Yeah.
That way you create
And
an
give it
environment where people bounce off of each other.
and give them the benefit of a doubt from the start instead of like the way that IEPs work and like how usually you start from the bottom, don't you? And then if you
And work your
then,
way up.
then then
Yeah.
you're trying to work your way up in terms of, but it's hard for officers when there's so many people on a wing to like notice that you've ever even done anything worth getting a positive
Mm,
IEP for. Do you know what I mean? Or to even like upgrade yourself. It's easier to be spotted doing something you shouldn't be, or to be punished
yeah.
for something else. So you can sometimes get trapped in the way that prisons run. So I like that idea of maybe giving people starting at enhanced, saying, "Do you want to make the most
Yeah.
of your time?" And then
Yeah.
being like, "Okay, like let's test it then. Like let's go. Like let's do the work."
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's a conversation that I've had in, for example, prison council, where we say you should start everybody off enhanced, because if you have an environment of people with nothing to lose because they don't have anything. If
Yeah,
everybody starts off enhanced, then now you're saying here is this thing. Yeah, you're viewed as an enhanced prisoner. Yeah, we view you in a particular light. That means we trust you to an extent, and just hearing that somebody trusts you and knowing that you have this responsibility now, yeah, makes a huge difference. You have something to lose.
yeah. And can you just, because we've got international global audience that will be listening to this at the
Hmm.
workshop, can you just, for the purposes of our audience internationally that don't understand the UK prison system, just clarify what enhanced, basic, and what the privileges are between those different categories?
All right, cool. So IEP is an incentivized system. We have three IEP levels. Well, in some prisons you have four. So it starts off, well, everybody starts off standard. Standard, what standard means is in terms of your allowance, your expenditure allowance, you have a particular band. So you might get on standard, you might get £20 a week that you're allowed to spend, as well as you have a particular time that you're allowed outside of your cell. Um, that's where everybody starts, yeah. If you have a fight or you get enough negative comments, then they drop you down to basic. Basic is a loss of, well, a further loss of agency. So basic, you might lose your TV. Basic, you're gonna miss out on association time outside of your cell. You might not be able to attend the gym um, until you get back up to standard. And then if you're standard for a certain amount of time and you get enough positive comments, positive entries and so forth, they will raise your status to enhanced, which essentially means you get more privileges. You might get more association time, you get more expenditure on your canteen. So canteen expenditure is being able to put credit on your phone, being able to buy toiletries, groceries, and so forth. And you might get extra gym sessions. Then in some prisons, they also have super enhanced, and super enhanced. The only place I've really come across super enhanced was in Scrubs. Super enhanced in Scrubs, what that looks like is they'll have a super enhanced wing where everybody's pretty much out of their cells all the time. Everyone that's super enhanced would have a job essentially. In Scrubs, they actually had a super enhanced cell. So it was like 6-man bang up in a massive cell, basically, with a large flat screen TV, like basically different living standards.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so we've this fascinating conversation, and we're gonna not gonna have enough time to dig into all of this, but we will do on the global workshop that's coming. Um, can you think of a pocket of the future that currently exists, so that you're aware of, which might act as a bridge, so like as a golden standard, or like, you know what, I saw maybe that example, super enhanced wings, or like or a program that you've been on, or something where you think, you know what, that's what the kind of future kind of should look like, and maybe if we did more of that, then that.
Um, I would say all of the lived experience work that's being brought to attention at the moment is a pocket of the future.
Mm.
When that lived experience is fully acknowledged within certain rooms, and there's credibility given to it in those rooms as well, the decision making rooms and so forth, and when more people with lived experience are able to have their impact in terms of policies and so forth, I think it will make a drastic change to the system. But another example of that would be, I'd say, trying to approach the justice system differently. So things like Oasis Restore. Um, so I was a co-creator for Oasis Restore back in 2021. So I helped use my lived experience to be able to advise and think about how that school would be run. So Oasis Restore, for people that don't know, is the UK's first secure school. So instead of young people getting sent to a secure unit or young offenders, they get sent to this secure school, which is not supposed to be like prison. It's supposed to focus on actual education and proper enrichment and less punitive um, dialect, basically, and focus more on a compassionate lens and actually being able to give the young people what they need to be able to turn their life around and fully rehabilitate themselves. I think when the rest of the UK starts taking approaches like this and stops demonizing people and looking at people with a more compassionate lens and allowing people the space to be human, um, I think he'll make a huge drastic difference to the justice system.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, which was, what do you think would be a good first step in the right direction? And I think, it sounds like that is a good example.
Yeah. Anything I
Uh,
can add? Anything I can add to the what would be a good first step? I would say mm, more mentality reframing. Like right now, so at the beginning of the conversation, we had a brief touch on what we've both been doing, and I think mindfulness
mm,
um people taking time sitting with themselves, being able to critique themselves and understanding how to navigate their emotions. I think things like that would be a great step to changing the system. If
Mm,
people could actually sit down and analyze their behavior and were open to being critiqued by others, knowing that people have your best interest at heart and they genuinely just want to uplift you. I think creating those safe spaces and environments for people to advise and not judge
yeah.
um, would make a huge difference. It would be a great first step.
Yeah, definitely. And making because people do have time, in prison. And it's like, well, how do we make that the most useful time for people, the most
Yeah.
purposeful time?
Because
Um,
essentially prison could be like a retreat. People go
yeah,
to retreats and they don't have their phones, they're not around people. So essentially it's a similar thing. And if prisons
yeah,
can be more like retreats, a getaway to focus on yourself, and it's reframed as such, I think
yeah,
it would for one, it would reduce the stigma from the public, and then also it would reduce the stigma for prisoners as
yeah,
well. You would feel less of a criminal or a demonized individual.
yeah, 100%. And just for context, I don't know if we recorded that part of the conversation, but I was just telling Javel about how I took a retreat away to South Africa to focus on myself and give myself some space and time, and exactly that. Like prison should be able to offer that, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and then the next follow up question to that is obviously, what do you think gets in the way? What do you think are the barriers that kind of prevent us from moving towards a more human justice system?
Lack of compassion.
Mm,
Um, I say this because I'm talking about compassion on both sides. And the reason I say this is because I was going to do some trauma informed training not too long ago. And I sat and I listened to everybody that had lived experience in the room, and everybody was asking for compassion from people that didn't have lived experience, basically saying people that don't have lived experience need to understand what it's like to have lived experience, mainly around mental health or substance misuse. That's what we were speaking about. And my question or my proposition to everybody else was, if you're asking for compassion, you also need to understand that you have to give compassion to them as well.
yeah,
Um, I think it's allowing people to fully be themselves. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I think we as humans think everybody needs to be like us or expects everybody to be like us. And the best way to draw close that gap is to allow people to be themselves and also accept that people can be themselves.
mm,
Because my thing is, um when we stop forcing people to do things that they don't want to do, then you actually allow them the space and room to make the choice of whether they want to do it or not. And when there's a choice in things, it's much more authentic.
yeah,
Example being, if you have a frontline worker who doesn't necessarily want to work with anybody that has mental health struggles or any traumas, then don't force them to.
yeah,
Find somebody else that does have that compassion and does have that time, and probably before you know it, and then also raise the incentive for those people. If that's the
yeah,
kind of work that we want to see, and those are the kind of people or attitudes that we want to embody, raise
yeah,
the incentive for people that
yeah,
are already living like that. And then the people that aren't willing to do so, they'll probably look at those people and be like, all right, cool. If they're getting a pay rise, like what do I have to do to become this person or be a better person to be
yeah,
able to also get a pay rise
yeah,
or also be able to achieve these benefits?
yeah. And so the thing that I'm taking from that, which I totally agree with, which is how do you incentivize agency and how do you give people more choices?
Yeah,
And if you give people more choices and you incentivize, but I think
yeah,
you also have to have, you can incentivize, but you can also have clear consequences.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
often they're not clear, the consequences either.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and so you're trying to get people to behave in a certain way, and you're not telling them what the incentives are or what the consequences are, and then letting them make the choice.
yeah.
You know, and so I totally agree with that. But as we start to wrap up the call, what keeps you going? when things get tough? And how do you look after yourself? We've talked a lot today about kind of mindfulness, about personal choice, about what makes us human, relationships. How do you keep yourself safe and well?
I would say by doing things that pour back into myself. And when I say that, I mean I'm somebody who's big on meditation, and it can be anything, whether your thing is prayer, whether you just need a getaway, you need to make sure that you allocate these times and you're disciplined enough to acknowledge when you're struggling slightly. You got to get to know yourself, like really get to know yourself, be your own best friend,
Yeah,
acknowledge when you start to slip and implement things that's going to allow yourself to uplift yourself again. If you need a bit of time out, be able to communicate that with people, be open, honest, and vulnerable. Vulnerability is the greatest strength that we can have as humans sometimes, because that allows you to let other people into your world. Instead of trying to keep everything in and just soldier on, sometimes the best and the strongest thing you can actually do is just say, I'm not okay right now.
yeah,
That
100%.
allows other people to start to figure out how they can support you in these arenas and these areas, and then gives you the space to actually rebuild and get to a place where you can be okay. And I would say that the minimum I try to do every day, we had the conversation about the pull of your old self and your new self. The minimum I try to do every day is show up as the person that I'm happy with.
Yes.
And allow that to reflect in your relationships and your connections as well. So a part of my goal this year is to be more intentional. And when I say be more intentional, is if me and you can have conversations about spirituality, meditations, retreats, when we connect, instead of connecting just to kill time, we should
Yeah,
be connecting to lean into these people that we're speaking about.
yeah,
So we should be going to do meditations together. We
yeah.
should be going to retreats together and doing things
100%.
that actually uplift us. And I think as humans and as a society, we don't do enough of that. We
No.
like to kill time instead of leaning into the people that
Yeah.
we really want to be.
And you think about, and time is the most precious thing, and the most, you can't put a price on time, but the social media companies can, and Netflix can,
Yeah,
and they all put a price on all of our times. And I
yeah,
guess it's about looking at our behaviors and thinking which what is the best use of our time, and which behaviors are helping us run towards ourselves, or
yeah.
which ones are helping us run away from
Right.
ourselves.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the final question, um, what are your top recommendations or places that people could watch poems, books, anything where you think, yeah, that's a good example, that was a good story, or even just like organizations that you want to shout out just to for people interested in learning a bit more, even about you and some of the stuff you do, or just in general about how we do create a more human justice system.
Okay. So the first book I'm gonna suggest is gonna be It Didn't Start With You by Mark Collins. Another book I'd suggest is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Um, and then things to watch. Ooh, a quote from Lao Tzu, yeah, that really helped to steer me in terms of my direction. And I can't remember the quote in full, but essentially it's saying, be careful what you think, because your thoughts become your actions become your habits become your character, and so forth. But for
Mm,
me, what that really did was ground myself in understanding that it's my responsibility. My thoughts are an option. The things that pop into your mind on a day-to-day basis, you have a choice whether you want to engage with them or discard them. And that's literally the same thing that we were talking about, the pull of the old self and the new self. Once you've grounded yourself in who you want to be, then the thoughts that don't align with that, don't hold on to them. You got to get comfortable with letting them pass and hold on to, or fill your mind whenever those thoughts do occur. Fill your mind with the positive thoughts of the person that you're choosing to show up as, the character that you want to be. Um, any other things that I can get people to Yeah.
I think that's a mic. I think that's a mic drop moment. Anyway, Javel. But we all have a choice. I think that's in the Viktor Frankl book as well.
Yeah.
And it's been a pleasure speaking to you. I look forward to seeing you on the workshop and future collaborations, and maybe doing some meditation together at some point, or finding a nice
Most
spot or doing
definitely.
pouring into each other.
Most definitely. I think that would be great. And just a quick shout out to my organization if anybody wants to take a look. Beyond the Narrative, and then a huge shout out to Spark Inside, Social Arc, and Capital, as well as the Parental Imprisonment Collective. These are all examples of organizations that are doing brilliant work in terms of lived experience and allowing people to really be human.
Shout out. Thank you so much.
All right,
And
thank you.
the future is human.
The future is human indeed. It was lovely speaking to you, bro.
You too.